Hi, this is Dr. Diane Gayhart, and this is an online lecture on how to complete licensing logs for the BBS, the Board of Behavioral Sciences, that licenses marriage and family therapists in California. And so I have had many students over the year beg me to do online lectures on these logs, and so I finally got around to doing it. So first, where do you find these logs? You go straight to bbs.ca.gov, and I always recommend that students go and download them directly from the BBS, because the BBS does update these from time to time, and if you're downloading them from a university or other website, you may not get the latest version, and sometimes they do make changes. Even if they aren't super significant, they can make something easier to read or understand, or they put a new definition on. So always go find them yourself. So I just want to start by providing a quick overview of some real basic principles here. Just in terms of counting hours as a marriage family therapist, you can count up to 1,300 hours from your degree program, from your master's degree that qualifies you for the marriage and family therapy license. 750 of these can be a combined total of counseling and supervision hours. And I'm assuming if you're listening to this, you're just starting to count hours. I have had some students who get tons of supervision kind of get a little mixed up on this. Where they get too much supervision and they aren't going to be able to count as many counseling hours. So that's something to think about as you are maybe halfway through your field site placement, and just to keep an eye on that. And then the other piece is that post-degree, you need to get a minimum of 1,700 hours. And so that brings us up to a total of 3,000. Obviously, if you only get, 250 during your practicum during your degree, you would need to get, at least another 500 post-degree. Another important, and it's not really a detail, but I was call it a detail, is that you have to have supervision in every single week that you claim hours. So let's say your supervisor is sick or they go to a conference. If you don't get supervision that week, you can't count any hours in that week, including, other types of hours like paperwork or such. And so you always want to make sure that you find a way, talk with your supervisor about what to do in those instances, in those weeks. Always ask if there's another way to get supervision. It's also one of the reasons I have now moved to encourage people to do supervision before Friday, usually the end of the week, because if you miss it, then the whole first half of the week, and you don't often have time if your supervisor is suddenly sick on Friday morning to find another supervision group, but it's something to be aware of. The other thing to be mindful of is that the supervision is kind of counted in funny ways. So there's something called a unit of supervision, and there are ratios you keep as a trainee and an intern. That basically it's 1 hour of individual supervision that is you, just you, and your supervisor giving just you supervision in a room with the two of you. Whereas group supervision, there can be up to 8 trainees and a supervisor, but then you need 2 hours of sitting in a group to count as 1 unit of supervision. So that's how they basically count the hours. And then, of course, trainees have a 1-to-5 ratio, so they need 1 unit of supervision, which could be 2 hours a group or an hour an individual, to count 5 client hours. And that's a ratio that trainees have while in the degree program. And then once you've graduated, interns need to do a 1-to-10 ratio, which is actually 1 unit of supervision for the first 10 clients, and then a second unit of supervision, which could be 2 hours a group, for your 11th hour and everything above that. So the option 1 BBS hour logs, which are going to be the only option after 2020, and for many people starting in 2018 and later, it's really going to be the only option that makes sense. they've really tried to streamline the hour logs and to make them as simple as possible. It's arguable that they've actually become simple, but here we go anyway. That's not what this lecture is about. So you're going to need to have direct contact. You'll need 1,750 hours of that, of which, so this is a subset, is a minimum of 500 hours with couples, families, and children. And then you get to count 1,250 hours of what they call non-clinical experience, meaning you're not working directly with clients. So this includes supervision, writing reports, progress notes, workshops, seminars, trainings, all that good stuff. But it does not include personal psychotherapy, which was in the old way of doing things. Now, in this transition phase, it's been called option 2. And it doesn't allow you to double count relational hours, which also was part of the old, what they called option 2. And all of that's fading out, and it's not counted as part of option 1. So let's go ahead and look at the form and start talking about how to fill out just the top portion. So you're going to put your name on the form, and you want to use the name that you plan to get licensed under. If you happen to hyphenate a name, or sometimes use your maiden name, sometimes use your married name or such, but do try to use whatever name you want to get licensed under here. Then you're going to put your supervisor's name, and you're also going to put the date you enrolled in your graduate degree program. And this goes on virtually every single form that you will ever fill out for the BBS until you get licensed. And that is because that tells the BBS under what law or set of laws and therefore set of criteria that you will get licensed under. And, certain requirements go into effect based on a given date as to when you enrolled in a program. Then you're going to put the name of your work setting and the address. And then this last box is very important because this will also tell the BBS whether to count the hours as a trainee and what ratio you need versus if you're an intern. And again, so even if you stay at the exact same site when you graduate from your master's or doctoral program that qualifies you for an MFT license, you would start a new set of logs just because the ratios shift. So you have a choice here between trainee and trainee and practicum. That trainee box is going to disappear very soon because with new rules that came out in 2012, you have to be a trainee and practicum. So unless they keep it on there in case you have been filling out these logs for a long time and you're taking a long time to get licensed, you may have been a trainee not in practicum, but after 2012, everyone had to be. So that's the box you check there. And then you can see there's a post-degree intern application pending. So after you graduate, there's often a 3-month window in there where you're getting your intern number. And so you will check that box for those 3 months. And then there's the registered intern number, which finally you got to check that box. And once you get that number, you will be just checking that final box. But that is kind of like the identifying information here. So now we're going to talk about how to actually fill in the hours on the logs. So the first thing to be aware of is that the year needs to be included. And before you know it, you will be racking up many hour logs, and having that year there is critical for really keeping track of the hours. And then you'll notice that each column, it says week of. So you're going to be able to get about 2 months worth of weeks on one log. So you need to, usually most people start counting their weeks on a Monday, but it could be 3, August 3rd. The next one would be 8/10, August 10th. Then you'd have August 17th, and that's what you're going to have across the top there. And now we come to our first white line, line A, which is direct counseling with individuals, groups, couples, and families. So this is when you are providing and using psychotherapeutic techniques with clients. So this is all of your direct service hours. And you're going to put the grand total for the week in the white box. Then the next line, A1, is just going to be for working with couples, families, and children. And so in this gray box, this gray line, you're going to take out, subtract, you're just going to put in the subset of hours that fall into this category. And again, remember, this is the category you need 500 of. Now, the thing with these gray lines, and I'll be honest, I'm not a real fan of these gray lines. No offense to any BBS officer listening to this workshop, but I do, because you're not going to add any of the gray lines into the total hours per week, which is that line C. The gray lines just get added across into the gray box at the end, and they're used to total up certain types of hours. So you don't add those gray lines into the total with line C. But that's not typically how spreadsheets work, so most of us find this very counterintuitive, let's say, is my very kind, politically, hopefully non-offensive language for the BBS. Then the next line is B, non-clinical experience. So this includes all supervision. So if you had an hour of individual, 2 hours of group, you'd put 3 hours for that. And if you did 7 hours of paperwork, that would bring you up to 10. And if you went to a 2-hour training, you'd be up to 12 hours of non-clinical experience. If you did an hour of client-centered advocacy, then you're up to 13 total hours of clinical experience. Then you have, the next line is individual supervision, so that's how many hours of individual supervision you received. And then you have group, which is how many hours of group did you receive. And so these get pulled out kind of the way the family hours do. You don't add these gray lines into the total for line C, but you keep this total, but you're able to total them by, doing the addition across the row for the total hours at the final end. And then finally, this total hours for the week is line A plus line B plus line C. So you're adding A and B, and you're ignoring all of the gray lines to come up with your total hours you actually worked per week, which is supposed to be a maximum of 40. Is that what is what you can actually count? You can't count more than 40 hours per week. And again, if you only got 1 unit of supervision, you can only count up to 10 hours in line A. So that is how the hours get totaled across get totaled for line C. And it is not super intuitive for those of us who are used to adding up all the numbers in a given column. And then underneath all of this, you get your supervisor's signature each week to basically validate and verify those hours. Finally, I want to talk about the watch, log, repeat guideline I often offer my students. That basically, when all of this is first explained, most of my students don't feel really clear, and finally when they try to log it with a real week or two of their own experience, it begins to make sense, and then often rewatching this really helps them make sense. So you can also ask your supervisor and your fieldwork instructor to help you know how to count your hours. And the truth is, in terms of the BBS hour counting, there are some issues or instances that might be a bit gray, and you want to go with your supervisor's judgment on those. And whoever's signing off on those BBS logs ultimately, is the one responsible for making that determination. Now, of course, if it seems really way too creative of a way to count hours, you should discuss this and make sure you're comfortable also with how hours get counted. But ultimately, again, your BBS supervisor should be making that call. So I hope this has been a useful, not too scary introduction to the BBS Option 1 hour logs.